in Desert and Wilderness, Chapter 6. Mrs. Rawlinson and Tarkowski actually expected the children not amidst the sand hills of Wadi Ryan, where they had no need or desire to ride, but in an entirely different direction, in the city of Elfachen, on the canal of the same name, at which they were examining the work finished before the end of the year. The distance between Elfachen and Medinet in a straight line is almost 28 miles. As, however, there is no direct connection, and it is necessary to ride to El-Wasta, which doubles the distance, Mr. Rawlinson, after looking over the railway guide, made the following calculations. Hamis left the night before last, he said to Pan Tarkowski, and in El-Wasta he caught the train from Cairo. He was therefore in Medinet yesterday. It would take an hour to pack up. Leaving at noon, they would have to wait for the night train running along the Nile, and as I do not permit Nell to ride at night, they would leave this morning and will be here immediately after sunset. Yes, said Pan Tarkowski, Hamis must rest a little, and though Staś is indeed impulsive, nevertheless, where Nell is concerned, you may always depend upon him. Moreover, I sent him a postal card not to ride during the night. A brave lad, and I trust him, answered Mr. Rawlinson. To tell the truth, so do I. Staś, with his various faults, has an upright character and never lies, for he is brave, and only a coward lies. He also does not lack energy, and if in time he acquires a calm judgment, I think he will be able to take care of himself in this world. Certainly. As to the judgment, were you judicious at his age? I must confess that I was not, replied Pan Tarkowski, laughing, but I was not so self-confident as he. That will pass. Meanwhile, be happy that you have such a boy, and you that you have such a sweet and dear creature as Nell. May God bless her, answered Mr. Rawlinson with emotion. The two friends warmly shook hands, after which they sat down to examine the plans and the report of expenditures connected with the work. At this occupation the time passed until evening. About 6 o'clock, when night fell, they were at the station strolling along the walk and resumed their conversation about the children. Superb weather, but cool, said Mr. Rawlinson. I wonder if Nell took some warm clothing with her. Staś will think of that, and Dinah also. I regret, nevertheless, that instead of bringing them here, we did not go to Medinet. You will recollect that that is just what I advised. I know, and if it were not that we are to go from here further south, I would have agreed. I calculated, however, that the trip would take too much time, and on the whole it would be best to have children here. Finally, I will confess to you that Hamis suggested the idea to me. He announced that he prodigiously yearned for them and would be happy if I sent for both. I am not surprised that he should be so attached to them. Further conversation was interrupted by signals announcing the approach of the train. After an interval, the fiery eyes of the locomotive appeared in the darkness, and at the same time could be heard its puffs and whistle. A row of lighted coaches drew alongside the platform, quivered, and stood still. I did not see them in any window, said Mr. Rawlinson. Perhaps they are seated further inside and surely will come out immediately. The passengers began to alight, but they were mainly Arabs, as Elfachen has nothing interesting to see except beautiful groves of palms and acacias. The children did not arrive. Hamis either did not make connections in El-Wasta, declared Pan Tarkowski with a shade of ill humor, or after a night of travel overslept himself, and they will not arrive until tomorrow. That may be, answered Mr. Rawlinson with uneasiness, but it also may be possible that one of them is sick. In that case, Staś would have telegraphed. Who knows, but that we may find a dispatch in the hotel. Let us go. But in the hotel no news awaited them. Mr. Rawlinson became more and more uneasy. "What do you think could have happened?" said Pan Tarkowski. "If Hamis overslept himself, he would not admit it to the children and would come to them today and tell them that they are to leave tomorrow. To us, he will excuse himself by claiming that he misunderstood our orders. In any event, I shall telegraph to Staś, and I to the Mudir of Fayum." After a while, the dispatches were sent. There was indeed no cause for uneasiness. Nevertheless, in waiting for an answer, the engineers passed a bad night, and early morning found them on their feet. The answer from the Mudir came about 10 o'clock and was as follows. "Verified at station. Children left yesterday for Kalak al-Sultani." It can be easily understood what amazement and anger possessed the parents at this unexpected intelligence. For some time they gazed at each other as if they did not understand the words of the dispatch, after which Pan Tarkowski, who was an impulsive person, struck the table with his hand and said, "That was Staś whim, but I will cure him of such whims." "I did not expect that of him," answered Nell's father. But after a moment he asked, "But what of Hamis? He either did not find them and does not know what to do, or else rode after them." "Yes, I think so. An hour later they started for Medinet. In camp they ascertained that the camels were gone, and at the station it was confirmed that Hamis left with the children for El Garak. The affair became darker and darker, and it could be cleared up only in El Garak. In fact, only at that station did the dreadful truth begin to dawn. The station master, the same sleepy one with dark spectacles and red fez, told them that he saw a boy about 14 years old and an 8-year-old girl with an old negress who rode towards the desert. He did not remember whether they were 8 or 9 camels altogether, but observed that one of them was heavily packed, as if for a long journey. And the 2 Bedouins also had big pack saddles. He recollected also that when he stared at the caravan, one of the camel drivers, a Sudanese, said to him that those were the children of the Englishmen who before that had gone to Wadi Ryan. "Did those Englishmen return?" asked Pan Tarkowski. "Yes, they returned yesterday with 2 slain wolves," answered the station master. "And I was astonished that they did not return with their children. But I did not ask the reason, as that was not my affair." Saying this, he left to attend to his duties. During this narrative, Mr. Rawlinson's face became white as paper. Gazing at his friend with a wild look, he took off his hat, pressed his hand to his forehead, covered with perspiration, and staggered as if he were about to fall. "Be a man, Rawlinson," exclaimed Pan Tarkowski. "Our children are kidnapped. It is necessary to rescue them." "Nell, Nell," repeated the unhappy Englishman. "Nell and Staś. It was not Staś's fault. Both were enticed by trickery and kidnapped. Who knows why? Perhaps for a ransom. Hamis undoubtedly is in the plot, and Idris and Gebr also." Here he recalled that Fatma had said about both Sudanese belonging to the Dongolese tribe, in which the Mahdi was born, and that Hadigi, the father of Hamis, came from the same tribe. As this recollection, his heart for a moment became inert in his breast, for he understood that the children were abducted not for a ransom, but as an exchange for Smain's family. "But what will the tribesmen of the ill-omened prophet do with them? They cannot hide them on the desert or anywhere on the banks of the Nile, for they all would die of hunger and thirst on the desert, and they certainly would be apprehended on the Nile. Perhaps they will try to join the Mahdi." And this thought filled Pan Tarkowski with dismay. But the energetic ex-soldier soon recovered and began in his mind to review all that happened, and at the same time seek means of rescue. Fatma, he reasoned, had no cause to revenge herself either upon us or our children. If they have been kidnapped, it was evidently for the purpose of placing them in the hands of swine. In no case does death threaten them, and this is a fortune in misfortune. Still a terrible journey awaits them, which might be disastrous for them. And at once he shared these thoughts with his friend, after which he spoke thus. Idris and Gebr, like savage and foolish men, imagine that followers of the Mahdi are not far, while Khartoum, which the Mahdi reached, is about 1,240 miles from here. This journey they must make along the Nile and not keep at a distance from it, as otherwise the camels and people would perish from thirst. Write at once to Cairo and demand of the Khedive that dispatches be sent to all the military outposts and that the pursuit be organized right and left along the river. Offer a large reward to the sheikhs near the banks for the capture of the fugitives. In the villages let all be detained who approached for water. In this manner Idris and Gebr must fall into the hands of the authorities and we shall recover the children. Mr. Rawlinson had already recovered his composure. I shall go, he said. Those miscreants forgot that Wolseley's army, hurrying to Gordon's relief, is already on the way and will cut them off from the Mahdi. They will not escape. They cannot escape. I shall send a dispatch to our minister in a moment and afterwards go myself. What do you intend to do? I shall telegraph for a furlough and, not waiting for an answer, shall follow that trail by the way of the Nile to Nubia and attend to the pursuit. Then we shall meet, as from Cairo I shall do the same. Good. And now to work. With God's help, answered Mr. Rawlinson.